over on that clock. So you know what? I'm landing in the middle. I'm landing in the middle. Well, very good. We're grateful to be back. We had a very good trip down to Indiana to visit some friends. My best man and his wife, they just had their first child. So we went down and visited them, which was a huge blessing. Lots of smiles. It's one of the few babies that smiles at me. It's great.
Might be a trend now.
Let's hope so. Let's hope that's a new start right there, right, Larry? I love it. So our reading tonight is from Hebrews 13. This was the text that while we were out, we went to church on Sunday, and the pastor preached from this text, and it was just so powerful and meaningful. I just wanted to read it to you. I'll read the first half of what he preached from verses 1 through 3, where it says, "Let brotherly love continue." I thought this is perfect. This goes right along with what we're studying. Verse 2, "Do not neglect to show hospitality to strangers, for thereby some have entertained angels unaware. Remember those who are in prison as though in prison with them, and those who are mistreated, since you also are in the body." These verses talk about serving and loving other people in the church, people who are members of both the local and the universal church as we minister to other believers. Showing hospitality by inviting them into our life and sharing with them and into our home. And he was helpfully pointing out that hospitality means a whole lot more than entertaining guests. It means sharing your life. And then in verse 3, of course, as we minister to people who are in need, people who are mistreated, people who are persecuted, people who need our help. And that's what we're gathered to do here tonight. A very real hands and feet ministry of loving and serving other people is to pray, and to pray for them and for each other. So as we sing A Servant's Heart tonight, number 431, make that your prayer before God. But as we begin our prayer meeting, make that your first prayer as we stand together and sing. Thank you so much. You may be seated.
Okay, there are outlines in the back. If you didn't get one, it's the same outline we've been working on for the last 2 weeks and will be for probably at least one, maybe two more. Spending a lot of time on love, and there's a couple of reasons why. I'll be in 1 Corinthians 13 tonight, if you care to turn there. 1 Corinthians 13 talks about faith, hope, and love, but the greatest of these is love. In Colossians, Paul said love is that which binds all things together perfectly. And the fruit of the Spirit, love is the one that's mentioned first. Peter says, above all things, have fervent charity among yourselves. And so others have said that love is the crowning virtue of Christianity, at least on our part. So I'm not going to go back to the first part of the outline. We're just going to talk a little bit of review from last week. And so that would be on your outline, capital 1, Roman numeral 1. And we looked at the superiority of love last Wednesday. So just quickly, that was D, the superiority of love. That's what we looked at last week. So just quickly, a review through that. 1 Corinthians 13, 1 through 3. Though I speak with the tongues of men and of angels and have not charity or love, I am become as a sounding brass or a tinkling cymbal. And though I have the gift of prophecy and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and though I have all faith so that I can remove mountains and have not, I'm just going to say love, I'm nothing. And though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and though I give my body to be burned and have not love, it profiteth me nothing. I have no idea why the translators of King James sometimes translated agape as love and sometimes as charity, but it's the same word. And so let's think love. When we think of charity, what do we usually think of?
Nonprofit organizations and stuff like that.
So it has different connotation for us today, doesn't it? So that's why I go with love. So the preeminence of love, first over eloquence. And though I speak with the tongues of men and angels, tongues here obviously refers to languages. It's not gibberish. And the point is, if one has maybe an extremely gifted orator, but if he doesn't speak in love, it'll be just so much noise. If it's the spiritual gift of tongues, which was active in the early church, and he was eloquently speaking that way without love, still, same thing, profiteth nothing. And then secondly, it was over spiritual gifts, and four are mentioned: prophecy, wisdom, knowledge, and faith, which would have been some of the more prominent gifts. Although in the church at Corinth, they overlooked, may I say, they did not emphasize the more important gifts. They went with the ones that they could make a show of, tongues, interpretation of tongues, healings, things like that. So these would have been some of the more prominent gifts that are mentioned here. And again, without love, I'm nothing. And then thirdly, over benevolence. Agape love is always self-sacrificing, but self-sacrifice isn't always motivated by love. One could give all he had without love and yet receive no reward. And then finally, the ultimate gift, even over martyrdom. Some actually sought martyrdom to gain credit with God. They thought didn't work, but they're probably thinking about the most sacrificial act possible. And we talked about how in some countries today they still do that. I remember seeing pictures, and I'm pretty sure it was in the Philippines, of people that would actually be hung on a cross and go through a parade, and other people cutting themselves and things like that, trying to gain some kind of favor with God. And obviously we realize that not all suffering for good is motivated by love, but if there's any other motive, then it's profitless. So that's as far as we got last week. And now we want to go to verses 4 through 7, which speaks of the properties of love. This is a passage of Scripture that has convicted me time and time again. And it's a measuring stick of the maturity of our love. So we start with the essence of love in the first part of verse 4. Love suffereth long and is kind. So number one, love suffers long. Ephesians 4:2 is not on the PowerPoint. I added this later. I was going through Ephesians on my devotions and I thought, wow, this fits in really well with what we're doing on Wednesday night, so I added it. I'll read verses 1 and 2 of Ephesians 4. I therefore, the prisoner of the Lord, beseech you that you walk worthy of the vocation wherewith ye are called, with all lowliness and meekness, with long suffering, forbearing one another in love. And so love suffers long, with all lowliness, meekness, long suffering, forbearing one another, or literally putting up with one another, and sometimes that's the case, isn't it? When our love has matured, we can't take any credit for it. God teaches us how to love. I grew up in an environment where love was just something I heard about, never really experienced. And it took me a long time to, I think my wife taught me a lot about that, about what it really means to love. Of course, God is the one that teaches us. And as our love grows, we care enough about people to be able to put up with the same things that they have to put up with from us, right? And we get to the point where we start to give each other, I don't want to say the benefit of the doubt, but realizing that we're all sinners saved by grace. We all have things that irritate other people, but the ability to see beyond that. And so love suffers long. It is not quick to assert its rights, nor to resent an injury. It will take anything from others. You say, that sounds a bit extreme. That's mature love. That's rare, but it's attainable to the point where we just understand, I've done so many wrong things, I've hurt so many people, I've sinned against God so many times. How can I not be forgiving and long-suffering toward others? And it describes one who is forgiving instead of resentful. So as you have thoughts or questions, please raise your hand. Sometimes you have a lot better things to say than I do, so I encourage that. Secondly, love is kind. Now, under love, love suffers long, we see that love will take anything from others. Under love is kind, we see that love gives anything to others. And I was supposed to keep my place in Ephesians, and I lost the place, but I'll get it quickly here. Ephesians chapter 4:32, I also decided to add. And be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. And I think that is, when we really grab a hold of that last part of that verse, that's when our love starts to really mature. Forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. But the verse starts out with be kind one to another. Tenderhearted, forgiving one another. This word kind can also be translated as manageable, mild, pleasant, benevolent, virtuous, or even serving. So love works for the welfare of others. And of course, the prime example of that would be the Lord Jesus Christ. Everything he did, nothing he ever did was for his own sake, his own benefit. It's always for the sake of those to whom he was ministering. So that's the essence of love. Then we go on in the last part of verse 4 through verse 6, And we see the exercise of love. First of all, what love avoids. In the middle of verse 4 there, love envieth not. So love is not jealous or resentful of others. Love is not jealous over what they may have, who they are, what their position is, or anything else. Love does not desire to be superior. This is a rhetorical question, but do we ever struggle with that? Well, I do. Until God reminds me how little I really am. There's something about the sin nature that wants to elevate it. Self wants to put self first and wants to be well thought of by others. But at the same time, sees what others have that they don't. And gets bitter about it. And so as we work our way through these, I encourage each of you to do what I am doing and what I have done, and that is measure myself. Don't think about the person that comes to mind. Think about yourself. And this is a measuring stick of the maturity of our love. How are we doing? Are you willing to take anything from others? Are you willing to give anything to others? Are you envious of others? And then, love vaunteth not itself. What does that mean? Anybody?
Is it like boasting or making sure people know what your value is or what you've done?
Okay, good. Any other thoughts on that? Love vaunteth not itself. Love is not a braggart. And get this, love is not motivated by applause. And by that, I don't just mean the clapping of hands. I mean the pat on the back, the recognition of a job well done. And by the way, there's nothing wrong, of course, with commending somebody, thanking somebody for what they've done. But love's motivation is not for applaud. Envy is wanting what others have. Bragging is trying to make others want what we have. And there is absolutely no place for that in the believer's life. I was actually, years and years and years ago, I was at I don't even know where I was. It was some kind of a pastor's conference. And the speaker was talking about all the things that he did. And he actually made the statement, y'all ought to be more like me. And it just made me cringe. I remember one of my kids saying that to me, and I said, no, you don't want to be like me. You want to be like the Lord. The one who envies or vaunted not itself is the one who says something like this, not vocally, but by the way they speak and act, my way is better, look at me. And then how about this one? Love is not puffed up. What does that mean? Linda?
Well, vaunteth was trying to make other people think about you, that you're great. Puffed up is that you already think you're great.
Love is not arrogant, or we use the word proud. Somebody tell me some things the Bible has to say about pride.
Goeth before a fall.
Okay, good,
It's an abomination to God.
good. These 6 things that the Lord hate, yea, 7, are an abomination to him. What's number 1? Proud look. What is so bad about pride?
It's all about self.
And there's something even deeper than that that makes it abomination to God.
Says I'm good enough on my own. I'm better than everyone.
Okay? Yes? Deeper. Pride takes credit for what God has done. And so, God has gifted each of us. God has given certain talents, certain opportunities, certain intelligence. So who should get the glory? But who tries to get the glory? And so you can see why pride is such an arrogant, an abomination to God, because it's taking credit for what God has done, really. Again, we need to learn how little we really are. So love is modest, love is humble, love is not a know-it-all. And here's something to think about. You can't love someone that you look down on. Are you starting to sink a little more in your seat? I am. Love is big-hearted. Pride is big-headed. Fourthly, love does not behave unseemly. Does anybody have a different version that you've got it open to? Got your Bible open to?
Does not seek its own.
Verse 5 does not behave unseemly. Rudely, okay, thank you. Okay, good. And that is actually, if you got out a Greek dictionary and looked it up, you could get words like indecently, untactfully, or rudely. So love cares about the feelings of others. Fifth, love does not seek her own. Love does not always think about, what about me? And I've said over and over and over from the pulpit that I believe that self-centeredness is the very essence of the sin nature. Love is more concerned about how to help others and how to honor Christ than how to get what self wants. 6, love is not easily provoked, and that's a pretty easy one to understand, not quick-tempered. I used to have red hair. Does anybody know what people with red, there's nobody here with red hair tonight. Anybody know what people with red hair are typically known for? Good looks, intelligence. No. What did you say? You know, you heard the person that said that, right?
Right.
I used to have quite a temper. I'm not going to say that I'm never quick to be angry, but not the way it used to be. Love is not quick-tempered. It's not easily provoked. It takes a lot to get love to respond in a negative way. And again now, no Christian alive is going to get 100 on this test. This is not designed to show us how immature our love is. This is designed to show us the areas in which we need to really come to Him in prayer and gain victory over. And I really encourage you to think through these and pray through these and ask God, which of these is a weakness in my life, and Lord, please help me know how to respond in a godly fashion, and so on. Love thinketh no evil. Now, how do we understand that? Last part of verse 5. Love thinketh no evil. I don't think that's how we would take it literally. Yes. Okay, that's really close, I think, to what the Greek would mean here, Linda. Not resentful. Yeah.
instead of
Yeah. How quick are we to pass judgment on people, especially on their motives? I think all of us would have to say, you know. God says judge righteous appearance, you know, and really when it comes down to it, God is the only righteous judge, and we don't know what people are going through. So love thinketh no evil. It is not suspicious of others. It gives others the benefit of the doubt. It is not quick to assume the worst in others. It is not quick to attribute evil motives to others. And here's a good one. It doesn't keep account of wrongs suffered. I've known people who have actually done that, even kept a list. And when things don't go the way they want to, out comes a list, and you did this, and you did this, and you did this, and you did this. Is that loving? Well, obviously not. And then the final one here under this category, love rejoices not in iniquity. And again, we have to ask ourselves, well, what does that mean? What does it mean to rejoice in iniquity? Does that mean enjoying a sinful lifestyle? You know, obviously that's not what it means, but what does it mean? Maybe a different version would shed some light.
Wrongdoing.
Rejoice not in wrongdoing, okay, and again, that kind of gives still the same idea there. But as we're working our way through 1 Corinthians, taking it in its context,
Maybe rejoices in somebody else falling because of
yeah. Good. They had it coming. That kind of an attitude? Okay, good. That can be understood that way. Any other thoughts? When we gossip about someone, are we rejoicing in iniquity? I think that would be an application here. That's something I actually have on my prayer list. This day, gossip. There's a fine line between a prayer request and a gossip sometimes. Oh, we need to pray for our brother so-and-so. You know what they say. Love does not rejoice in other people's wrongdoing. And love, on the other hand, takes no pleasure in wrongdoing. Remember that song we used to sing as kids? Maybe your kids sing it. The things I used to do, don't do them anymore. There's been a great change since I've been born again. That's some pretty good theology. I don't like some of the other verses, but how does that one go? Don't remember. Probably a good thing. Okay, time's up. Any comments, questions? Yes, Dan.
I have a question. This is actually going very back to the beginning of where we started tonight on the essence of love. You talked about how love suffers long, and I was talking with an unsaved friend recently about Christ's sacrifice of love, and I told her it was God's greatest expression of love to us, and she objected and said, well, I don't see how Jesus could just give himself up like that. And we got into an interesting discussion about the difference between standing up for yourself and not letting yourself just be steamrolled and walked all over versus real Christian love and forbearance. And I was just wanting to hear if you had some insight to share about that, or how you would kind of differentiate those, how you would discuss that. So I have my own thoughts, and I feel like I wasn't very effective in that discussion.
Well, that's the kind of thing I think I would have to think through a little bit myself before I would give a very adequate answer. But let me just say this. There is a time to not I don't know if I want to use the word defend ourselves, but to try to explain, because we don't want people to walk away with the wrong impression. There's a time to say, oh, look, that's not what I meant. And I'm not sure really if this is what you're talking about either. If we use the Lord as an example, can you think of any time where he did try to justify anything that he said or did? Here's the point, he didn't have to. We sometimes do. It's better to clear the air, can I use that word? To explain our motive, to explain what we really meant, or even, if necessary, to apologize, which needs to be done quite often, I'm sure. I'm kind of groping here. Anybody else want to add to this discussion?
So it's about patience and forbearance when we talk about love, but not necessarily about simply allowing ourselves to be taken advantage of.
There are times when we do. There are times when we just allow ourselves to be taken advantage of and not try to retaliate, not try to get back what we feel is ours rightly. There's a time just to commit it to the Lord.
The question my unsaved friend asked me, and this is what I've really been thinking through, is where's the line?
Yeah. Yeah, and we don't always know where the line is, so what do? Linda?
Because I have a good friend that was defamed by other people, another person in the church. In that case, he said, God will vindicate me. And I really think it's like, is he defaming God? We will, I think that's one of the lines. When somebody is defaming God by what they claim, then we know we can righteously take a stand. But there are times when I think you can feel when your pride is saying, I wanted to defend myself, and you have to stop and ask, God, is this going to help this person, or am I just trying to
Make myself look better?
yeah.
Yeah. And kind of getting back to what Dan was saying, where do we know, how do we know where the line is? We always don't know where the line is, but we know somebody who does. And so sometimes it's just waiting, praying, asking God for wisdom, and then maybe going back. Seth?
I think another thing we have to remember is that suffering as a Christian is not always a bad thing. Look at Paul or Stephen, and I don't remember what book, but they counted it as gain or as a good thing to suffer for the cause of Christ. And God does call us to go through trials that could take the form of being taken advantage of, that we can see as an opportunity to glorify God. It's not always a bad thing.
And didn't Stephen say, forgive them? Of course, the Lord did. Forgive them, for they know not what they do. And sometimes that is the bottom line. Sometimes there are people that you just can't, no matter what, you just can't, I won't use the word rectify, but that's not the right word. Sometimes I have to group.
Reconcile?
Yes, reconcile, thank you. Sometimes reconciliation, it's got to be two-sided, right? As we mentioned earlier, you can forgive someone from your heart, but if they don't repent, fellowship is not restored. So good thoughts, anything else? Yes?
Like the criteria is going to be different for every situation that you run into.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not going to tell somebody that's suffered abuse at the hands of a family member, you need to keep going through this behavior. But you're also not necessarily going to, correct somebody every single time they misunderstand you.
Yeah.
And also
Yes.
Not just, I don't like this, this is my right.
Very good, very good. And sometimes it's better just to allow that person to think the wrong thing about us and just leave it with the Lord. We don't always have to feel like we have to justify. Although most of the times I would think probably that would be the best. But as I think, Isabel, I think you're the one that said every situation is different because every person is different. And so good input, thank you. Anything else? Linda?
Just a quick comment back on love envy if not. Because I just heard or learned today that envy is the sin of a transgender person or a person who's not happy with the way God made them. They want to be like something that they're not. Or somebody. And I just thought, they're not settled and stable inside themselves to be able to love others. They're loving themselves only. But I feel like that is a really good tool to know when you're talking or communicating or trying to help a person that doesn't is seeking something other than what, like that. I did not really think about it that way before.
What's the opposite of envying?
Contentment.
Yes. And say that again?
Be thou content with what you have and what
Yeah.
God has given.
Yeah. Paul said, I have learned in whatsoever state I am in, even Wisconsin, therewith to be content. Contentment is, it's not listed as an attribute of love, but it is the opposite of being envious, being content with what God has given you, with who you are, with your position in life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Because if we are not content, who is our resentment ultimately? God. Okay, excellent discussion tonight. Anything else? Okay, I have only a few requests. And before I do, those forms I put on the back table about God's attributes had a few mistakes. And so we corrected those and put the new ones on the back there. So if you want to throw away the old one and pick up a new one. But I encourage you to, not just because I think so, but because